Okay, I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the 3D modeling programs I use. You'll be able to do all kind of stuff with it. You can do interiors, interior design like a house and things like that. You can animate characters, you can put them in a game, a lot of things like that. And on a side note, what I am using to record all this is OBS Studio. Now, this is all open source. With open source stuff is freeware. You can download it. Usually you can have the source code, and many people work on it to try and improve the program. The first 3D program I'm going to show you is one I really like. It's called Sweet Home 3D, and it's an architectural program. It's written in Java, so it runs pretty quick. There's libraries. People make a lot of things for it, and you can actually make your own models and things like that and bring them in. First thing we'll do is we'll do a room, just a simple room. You start by creating the walls. So we'll come in here and create the walls. Click here, left click to start the wall, drag it across, make it the size you want. We'll say 24 feet by 12 feet. And when you mouse back across, you'll see a line pop up. Well, you should. Well, we'll bring it to there and then double click on the end to create the room. Now, if you go into the selection tool, you can actually move it around down here and look at it. So we have 4 walls right now. Now we're going to put a floor in that room. So we'll click on the floor and easily go to the outside, left click, left click, left click, double click to end the room. It'll tell you how many square feet that room actually is. Selection tool, we'll double click on it. It'll bring up the room. We'll call this living room. And you can put multiple rooms together and things like that. Another thing we're going to do is we're actually going to put a floor in it. So we're going to click on this texture here. Textures is a way to paint on a surface, a pattern or a color or whatever you want to use. So we'll come in here and we'll limit it to floors. And it'll tell us different floors. We can have beige tiles, more beige tiles. So we'll grab that, and you can actually bring in your own textures and stuff like that, and I'll show you that stuff later on. So we'll say okay, and we have the choice to make it matte, which is like a dull finish, or a shiny finish. We'll give it a shiny finish, and that's what it looks like so far. And we can set the size of the tile and stuff like that, whatever we need. Now you can bring in doors and windows, things like that. And again, you can create all these models if you want. You don't see what you want. We'll come up here, we'll grab this door, and when you mouse over, you might have seen there was a thumbnail of what it is. You can change the facing of the door, the size of the door, whatever. So any object you bring in like that, you can double click on it and you can give it names, or you can actually change the width. If we wanted to make this door 10 foot wide, we could do it. You can go into change the color, the materials. You can come into here and modify. Say the door handle, we want it to be shiny. Yeah, it's up there, color. We'll make it like a gold color. We'll make it shiny. The door frame, I don't know what the metal is up here. It's probably hinges or something. So we'll say okay, okay. So there's our door handle now, and it's nice and shiny. You can bring in windows like that. And we'll bring this window in. You can set how high you want it off the floor. You can make the width, whatever. Say we'll make it wider. We'll make it 3 feet wide. Put in 3 feet. Hit OK, and there we got a 3 foot wide window now. You can bring in furniture. You can bring in people if you want to get a size of the room. There's a dog. You can bring in a dog. You can bring in a guy standing there. We'll bring in this guy and stand him there just for reference. You can see what that looks like. And then, like I said, you can bring in furniture, and that's what's kind of cool. You can actually design a whole house this way, and it's kind of nice. So we'll say living room. We'll come down here to we'll grab a sofa, since that's pretty big. You can mouse over and pick the ones you want. Modern looking, old looking, whatever. We'll grab that one, we'll drag it, and as you notice, it gives you the sizes and everything. You can rotate it to what you need. You can double click on it. You can change the colors again, everything, sizes, all that kind of stuff. If you wanted it off the ground, you could raise the elevation up, things like that. Now, what's kind of cool about this too is you can actually do renderings, and they're not too bad. Now mine's altered some here, so you'll have a different drop down, but it'll still have rendering. Simple photo rendering. Here's where you can set the size of the rendering if you want to make it bigger or whatever. We'll say we'll make it 1024 wide. You can turn off the proportions if you want. If you want to make it square, for example, you could do that. A different quality, the higher the number, the better the quality, the longer it takes. And when you get up higher, you can control the lighting and everything like that. But for right now, we'll just put it on 2. We'll do create. There it is. Gives you a chance to save it. And we'll save it to the desktop. We'll call this room 1. It's a PNG file. Close that up. And another thing, if you wanted to export things, you can actually go in here and export, and it will ask you what you want to export, and it will ask you if you want to select everything or just certain things. Sometimes in a game or modeling, I will actually click on the wall itself and export just that, and then build it later on in case I want to get the wall out of the way to do a rendering or something like that. You can also have this furniture where you can bring in furniture, where you can import models, you can import textures, things like that. So this is actually a pretty cool program. Now, that image we just made, we're not going to save this, we don't need it for anything, is right here. We'll double click, we'll bring it up. That's not too bad. It's 88%. That's about 100%, but you can see how that works. Now, the next open source program I'm going to show you is called Make Human. Make Human's pretty cool because you can actually sit there and design characters for games. You can animate them. You put the bones in more or less to animate them for games and things like that. And this is open source and it's free too. It's not bad. I'll show you one that's a little bit better later. Now, when you bring up this basic human, you can actually select the gender. Say we want to make a guy a little older, and actually if you see at the bottom of the screen, it actually has the age. Like this guy's 35 years old, his weight, his height, and everything. And it's usually in the metric system. We'll make him a little more muscular. Proportions, that's where you can, well, here's what it does. It can actually makes proportions a little different. Then you can actually choose ethnicities. We'll come up here and we'll make him a little more Caucasian. Gender, he can be male or female, and you can change their attributes. Face is where you can go in and you can actually stylize your character and make them the way you want. Say I want a real rectangular face, I can do that. Age, you can change head fat. All these different parameters you can change, and you can also go in here and change different individual parameters like forehead. We can make his temples go in or out. Nose size, you can make his nose wider, smaller, whatever you want to do. Those size details, yeah, nostrils, you can give them bigger, smaller nostrils. You can see some of that stuff moving around. So you can stylize the character pretty good. Neck, eyebrows, you can angle his eyebrows up, down, something like that. You can move up and down on the eyebrows. Torso, same deal. You can go and you can change different parameters and things like that. Arms and legs, random, you can really get some crazy looking stuff. Geometries is important. When you go into geometries, this is where you can actually put clothing on the guy. We can come over here and we can limit some of the clothing. So we'll say male, and it comes across here, different things that male would have. Here's a casual suit. We'll give him that first. Well, you got to click on it one time. You click on it twice, it'll take it back off. So we have him. Now another thing we're going to need is going to be shoes. So we're going to come down here, we're going to filter it by shoes, and we'll just give him these ones here. There. Now he's still pretty bland yet, so this is where it starts getting interesting. You come into eyes, you can actually give him high poly eyes in case you're going to do close-ups and stuff. Hair is where you can select what kind of hair you put on. We're going to give him this hair. Teeth, in case you're going to animate him or he's going to talk, he's going to need teeth probably. topologies. Topologies is how it sets up the mesh, and that's kind of important. Some of them look all different. You can see that guy looks kind of weird. Male generic, male muscle, in case he's going to have a little more muscle. We'll just go with male generic for now. Eyebrows, you're going to have to give him eyebrows so he looks human. There, that's not too bad. Eyelashes, he has to have eyelashes. We'll give him some there. Tongue, in case you're going to animate him, you might not need to give him a tongue. Materials, this is where you can go in and you can choose skin tones and stuff like that. So we'll come down here and we'll grab male, and we'll see we have different skin tones. So if a texture is missing, it'll show that like that. Old Asian, we'll give him this one up top. That one's pretty good, I think. Okay, pose and animate. This is important too. This is where you're going to give them the bones, and the bones are like, they're called armatures, but they're like what you have. To move your arm, you have to have the bone, and it pivots on the bone and all that. These are all the different ones you can actually control. You can come in here and you can pre-pose them ahead of time. Or you can do it in other programs. I usually do it in other programs, but this is kind of nice. It helps you out. Then expressions. You can actually go in and choose expressions, like if he's mad, attention, he's paying attention to you. Yeah, we'll leave that go. That looks pretty good. I kind of like that. Now you can save these to its native format. It's Make Human format. But I typically want to export it, and I want to export it as Make Human MHX2. Another thing I do is I change it to meters, because most programs work in meters like Blender and that. So we're going to make it meters. So that's important to do. So we got to figure out where we're going to put them. We're going to throw them on a desktop. We're going to call him Guy 2, because I already had one there that I experimented with before. We'll call him Guy 2. It's got to be that format, so we're exporting them as that. So we save it. And I'm going to leave this running in the background, because there's a way you can actually sync this with Blender. Blender's a really cool program. I really like it. Now it takes a little while because it's writing a JSON file and writing the mesh itself. So we have that. Now we're going to fire up Blender. Blender is really cool. It's like this, to me, it's like the Swiss utility knife of 3D modeling. It will do modeling, it'll do sculpting, it'll do UV editing, it'll do texture painting, shading, animation, rendering, compositing, scripting. I use it as a video editor and everything. So here's Blender running, and we have it set up just in its default layout, which is 3D. We're going to bring in that guy we just made. So import, and there's different formats you can bring it in. Now something different is this one here will bring in the armature in that. Not all these formats will. OBJ won't, it's just an object file. FBX usually will, and there's other different kind of formats. But we're going to go with this. We're going to do this, then we're going to browse to the desktop. We're going to find our second guy we made, and we're going to import him. It'll take a second or two, and there he is. Now, I'm moving it around, and I'll explain all this in the future, but I just want to show you guys what it'll do. That's the camera we have. I'm going to come into the world button. I'm going to give it... hang on. I clicked on collection, world. I thought that's where I had my ambient occlusion. Oh, wait a second. I know why. Come up here to render. And this is the Eevee engine. We are going to switch over to Cycle. Cycle's a little older. Eevee's the new one that everybody's raving about. I don't know enough about it yet. I do like it. It looks like it has a lot of potential. But we're going to go into Cycles. Now we're going to come into World. We're going to turn on the ambient occlusion. That's lighting, like a generic lighting that goes on the outside. There's already a light in the scene and a camera by default in Blender. And it usually has a cube. I usually delete that out in the beginning. So we have that. Now, what we want to do is we want to go into the render, and you either pick CPU or GPU. Now it depends. Sometimes the CPU will be better if it has more cores. I would recommend doing a render with each to see which one's better. We're just going to leave it at CPU for now. And up here, down here is where we set the size of the render. 1024 by 1024. That's a decent size. And we're all set up to render, and if you notice, you'll see these lines. These are the bones from before. We're not going to do anything with them yet. We're going to come up to render, and we're just going to render one image. It'll take a few seconds and it'll build blocks, and you can change all those parameters and everything. But as you can see, that's kind of cool. It's already got a pretty good start going. This is just one frame we're rendering. When we do animations, we'll be rendering each frame. It's kind of like a drawing or a flip book, how they used to do cartoons years ago. And you can see how the guy is. Now, if there's any problems with him, you can go into Sculpt, or you can do different ways, and you can actually change everything up that you need. So what we're going to do now is, now mine's not the default setting. Usually the default setting has a timeline on it. I don't use the timeline all that much, so I usually turn it off. So there's the timeline. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to make a small animation. We're going to come in here and we got to be in pose mode, and there's different modes. There's object mode, edit mode, pose mode. Since we're messing with an armature, we're going to go into pose mode. So we're going to come here and we're going to grab one of these bones. Well, before we do all that, I'm going to hit A and I'm going to select all of these bones. And I'm going to hit I and I'm going to do location and rotation. What that's doing is that's going to record a keyframe. That's going to be the first frame. All these bones are there. Then we're going to move up to, say, 40. And we're going to change some of these. We're going to rotate this one and click off and click back on. That's the easiest way. And we're going to rotate the arm out some. We're going to rotate this. You would have to go in and pay a lot of attention to how you're rotating everything, but for this tutorial we're just going to do this. We're just going to move some bones around. And you can twist them, you can rotate them a lot of different ways. So we'll do this, and then we'll grab all of them again with the A key, and then we'll do I to make another keyframe, location, rotation. So what that's going to do, that's going to allow his arms to move out. Now you could do this with every bone. You can do a lot more than that. We're going to do that. That's going to give us 40 frames of him moving. Now we don't need to have all these frames. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go up to, we'll say frame 60. The start and the end of the animation. Right now it's giving us 250 frames. We don't need all those, so we're going to have 60. So when we go back, we come here. We do this. Okay? So, and you can actually use like a VCR. You can go to the ends like this. You can set a keyframe here. There's a lot of ways you can do stuff in Blender. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. I think it's here. Nope. And like I said, they changed this a lot. So a lot of things, oh, it's right here. A lot of things are in different places, and I'm not familiar with where everything is. Now, you could render 60 frames, 60 ping images, and then put them all together. That's an image sequence. You could do it that way. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to record an MPEG video, which a lot of people use. Now, there's an encoder to use. We're going to use that. This one here gives you very good compression, but we're going to use this one because there's more of it out there. The codecs that are there are good, encoding speed's good. We can set all that up. I don't want it to take too long, and if we had audio, we'd put audio in here. So what this is going to do is this is going to make an MP4 and put it in this temp directory that we have. Now, we also have it set to where is it? Volumes. Is it here? Yeah, I'm looking in the wrong place again. We're not going to make it so big. We're going to make it 50% just for the sake of the tutorial. And there's something else, and I forget where that one's at, but we'll find it. Oh, denoising helps a lot of times when you're doing renderings and things like that. Film. Yes. You can make it a transparent background. So you can put him over top of things. And it's really cool because you can do an animation and you can actually go into here again in the video editor and you can actually put him over top of something. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're going to render animation. And it'll go through and it'll start drawing these frames one at a time. and you'll see his arms start to move. And what we're going to do is we're going to render, and if you look up top during the timeline, you'll actually see it moving too. So it'll tell us where it is, and it's building that file. And like I said, you could render each individual ping and then you could put it together. There's a lot you can do with this thing. You can do overlays, you can do alphas, and if you noticed in the here, we don't have a color behind there because it's transparent. So I know this is taking a little while, and I'm not going to pause the video because I'm still learning how to use my OBS Studio, which works pretty good. I got hotkeys designed, but sometimes they interfere with what you're actually running. So we're on frame 9, we're going to go to frame 60. But if we go into the temp file, we can actually see that it's building something, and it usually defaults, unless you put a name in there, it'll put the name in front of the frames, and it tells you how many frames. Now that's kind of nice, because if you're going to do a bunch of different animations and put them together, it'll also tell you the length, but it'll also you know, in case you're going to do more animation later, it'll tell you if it's longer and all that kind of stuff. So it works out pretty good. But like I said, as it's building it, we're a quarter of the way done. Now Blender's pretty cool because, like I said, you can do modeling. You can do, there's a program called ZBrush, which is real popular, but it's expensive. Blender will do almost all that too. And you can make different brushes and pull the stuff around like it's clay. I mean, that's basically what it's trying to imitate. It'll have a lump of clay and you move it around and all that. And then once you do that to the mesh, though, you got to do things like read topology and things like that to smooth it out and make the mesh more uniform and consistent. UV editing, what that actually is up top too. UV editing is, even this character has UV editing. What you do is you take the mesh and it's almost like you unfold it and you would paint it on a flat surface. So what you're doing is taking a 2D image and wrapping it around the 3D. UV editing tells you how to do that. Texture paint is a way you can actually go in and paint on the 3D model. Like if you want to put a stencil on there, or you wanted to paint a different color or a scar on his face or something like that, you could do that. Shading is where you build shaders. Shaders are textures. You can give it how much it reflects, how dark it is on one side. There's a lot of different things you can do with shading. And animation is kind of what we're doing now. I mean, there's different layouts for it. Right now, I'm just using a homemade layout that I just threw up there. Compositing is where you're going to do video stuff, where you can actually, you could have like a spaceship flying over a planet, or you could have this guy standing right in front of an ocean scene, an animation. You could actually have a sea in the background moving, and you could have him standing there and moving. You could move him. Scripting is where you use Python scripts. Python scripts are really cool. When I write some of them, you can actually have it design things. Like I wrote a floor tile generator where I have these different random images, and it twists them, you know, rotates them like 90 degrees. Like say you want to do a floor tile in a kitchen. You're not going to see every tile exactly the same on the floor. I mean, you might, but that's not what you want. So I wrote this floor tile generator that it goes through with the images, and it takes random images, a set of them, maybe like 20 of them, and it rotates them in different ways. It flips them, it mirrors them, it does different random things, so it looks like it's a different tile each time, and it helps enhance realism. The hardest thing I think for me with this stuff to make it look real is lighting. Lighting's everything. Once you get lighting down, you can make some really fantastic images. And one of the programs that I'm really trying to learn is OBS Studio, and it has a lot of lighting stuff in it that's different. It has something called an iRay render, which they used to be 3D light, they called it, and it looks pretty good, but the iRay stuff looks really good. And it's similar to what Blender's doing here. Blender has this old, they had an old engine, but now they have cycles, which I really like, and it's pretty good, and that's what we're using here. But they also have Eevee. Eevee's more live time. It's pretty good, and it's got a lot of potential. There's other renderers you can put in, Lux renderer, stuff like that. A lot of things can be added to Blender. A lot of utilities can be added. There's tons and tons of free ones. They're under add-ons. and that's under Edit Preferences and then Add-ons. You can go in there and you can actually put it. There's a lot to come with it from the uh, makers of it, but there's all these other ones you can put in. There's some for architectural. There's Bolt Factory, extra objects. There's a lot you can add. Plus, there's a lot you can download online. I might have stopped our rendering. I think I did, but that's still okay. Let's let me see. I think I did. Well, you can see how it works so far. Yeah, I stopped it early, but that's okay. You can see what it's doing there. And like I said, that image is clear in the background. So what you could do is, once you have that, you could bring a movie in and you could put him over top of that movie. Okay, we'll explain that later on. That's enough for now with Blender. One other one I'm going to show you before I quit this tutorial is DAZ Studio. DAZ Studio is a free program that's really cool. It has a lot of free stuff in it. Their thing is you can buy a lot of models online. Once you buy those models, that's where they get their revenue from. So I have a bunch of things already made, like I have this under favorites. But you can load them in through the content library. It has a database that runs and things like that it'll actually go through. But you can see that's actually not too bad. You can do the same thing like you did with Make Human. You bring clothes in, you put hair on, you can do animations, stuff like that. Like you can go in and select different parts. You have parameters down here, posing, scene builder, poses. You can give them different poses. And you can do the rendering here too. Now render here, there's 3D Delight, or 3D Light, whatever they call it, where you can go in and you can render it. And it renders pretty quick. I mean, this one here is taking a little while, but 7 out of 21. I have 3 screens, so bear with me. 52%. 3D Delight doesn't, or 3D Light, whatever, it doesn't show you what it is until it's actually done doing the render. Now the lighting's not right, obviously, but that's what it'll do. And the reason it's not right is because I have the environment set up for iRay. So that, but it would use, that's about how fast it would take. So we'll come under here under iRay, NVIDIA, and I like this one the best. Now this one here takes a lot longer, and there's ways to speed it up, and I don't have it really set up for it to speed it up. So what it does there, now it'll keep getting better and better as it renders. So you can actually see there's a shadow there because I'm using the dome, the environment, and all that kind of stuff. But as it renders, it goes through iterations. The amount of iterations is how long it's going to take to render. The longer, the more iterations, the longer it's going to take to render. And you can control all that and everything like that. But that's pretty cool. It'll do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff for smart content. You get these shaders where if you wanted to, basically make her aluminum, you could do that too. There's a way you would come into surfaces, and then I don't know if I can just do this. Yeah, where she would be aluminum. Now give it a second or two. Kind of like the Terminator stuff. Yeah. You can see when I move how she has aluminum. If I rendered it out, she would be aluminum. Alright, that's it for now. If this is any use, I will make a lot more of them, and I'll go into a lot more detail. But like I said, this is my first time. I'm just testing everything out, making sure everything works. So, see you later.